Jake Morrison floated through the empty corridors of Station Erebus 7, his helmet light cutting through the darkness. He had been salvaging abandoned stations for 15 years now, but something about this place felt different. The station hung in the void between star systems, far from any trade routes or inhabited worlds. Nobody had been here for a very long time. His scanner beeped softly as he moved deeper into the station. The Galactic Salvage Corporation had sent him here to strip out any useful technology, maybe grab some power cores or computer systems. It was supposed to be a simple 3-day job. Get in, take what he could carry, get out. But the readings on his scanner made no sense at all. Something was drawing power deep in the station's core. A lot of power. The kind of power that could run a small city, all concentrated in one place. That should not be possible on a dead station that had been floating here for thousands of years. Jake's curiosity got the better of him. He had to know what was down there. The corridors changed as he went deeper. At first they looked normal, the kind of metal hallways you would find on any station. But the further he walked, the stranger things became. The walls started to show markings he had never seen before. They were not human writing, and they were not from any of the alien species he knew. The symbols seemed to flow like water, shifting slightly when he looked at them directly. Jake's boots left footprints in the thick dust. Nobody had walked these halls in a very long time. Maybe nobody had ever walked here except for whoever built this place. The thought made him feel alone in a way that bothered him more than he wanted to admit. After an hour of walking, he reached a massive door. It was at least 10 meters tall and covered in more of those strange symbols. His scanner showed that most of the station's power was flowing to whatever lay beyond this door. Jake placed his hand on the control panel beside the door. To his surprise, it lit up under his touch. The ancient system still worked. The door opened slowly, grinding against mechanisms that had not moved in millennia. Beyond it lay a chamber so large that Jake's helmet light could not reach the far walls. He stepped inside and his breath caught in his throat. In the center of the chamber floated a massive crystalline structure. It was shaped like a cage or a prison, made from some kind of clear material that glowed with a soft blue light. And inside that prison was something that should not exist. The creature looked like the dragons from Earth's old stories, the ones parents told their children at bedtime. But this was no story. This was real, and it was huge. The dragon's body had to be at least 50 meters long from its nose to the tip of its tail. Its wings were folded against its sides, but even folded they looked powerful enough to create hurricanes. What struck Jake most were the dragon's scales. They were not any single color. Instead, they seemed to shift and change, showing colors that Jake had never seen before and could not really describe. Looking at them too long made his eyes hurt and his head feel strange. The dragon was not asleep. Its eye was open, watching him. Just one eye, because of the way it was positioned in the crystal prison. But that one eye held more intelligence than Jake had seen in most sentient beings. The dragon knew he was there. It was aware, trapped and aware for who knew how many years. Jake checked his scanner again, his hands shaking slightly. The stasis field that held the dragon was failing. The technology was ancient and breaking down. His computer calculated that the field would collapse completely in less than 2 days. When that happened, the dragon would be free whether anyone wanted it to or not. He stood there for a long moment, just staring at the impossible creature before him. Then he did what he was trained to do. He started looking for information. There had to be records somewhere, some explanation for what this place was and why the dragon was here. Jake found a control room on the upper level of the chamber. The computers were old, older than anything he had worked with before. It took him 3 hours to get them working well enough to read the files. What he found made his blood run cold. The station had been built by a civilization called the Architects. They had vanished from the galaxy 5,000 years ago and nobody knew what happened to them. But these records showed at least part of the story. The Architects had built this prison for one specific purpose, to hold the dragon. They called it the Render. According to the files, it had destroyed 17 star systems before the Architects finally managed to trap it. They had thrown everything they had at the problem. Their best scientists, their greatest technology, all focused on building a cage that could hold the most dangerous creature in the galaxy. But even with all their power, they could not kill it. The best they could do was trap it and hide it away where nobody would ever find it. They built the station in the emptiest part of space they could find and then erased all records of its location. This was meant to be a secret that died with their civilization. Jake read deeper into the files, though the translation software struggled with the ancient language. The dragon had not been attacking randomly. It had been defending something. The architects had been expanding their territory, pushing into regions of space they marked as forbidden. The dragon had tried to stop them. The files were corrupted and incomplete, but one thing became clear. The architects had been afraid, not just of the dragon, but of what the dragon was protecting. Something in that forbidden space scared them even more than a creature that could destroy suns. Jake sat back in the control chair and looked down at the dragon in its crystal cage. It was still watching him. Those eyes held thousands of years of imprisonment, of being awake and aware but unable to move, unable to speak, unable to do anything but wait. His communicator buzzed. Lisa Grant's face appeared on his screen. She was his supervisor back at corporate headquarters, and she looked annoyed. "Morrison, you are 3 hours late for your check-in. What is going on out there?" Jake made a decision in that moment that would change everything. He could tell her the truth, report what he found, and let the corporation decide what to do. They would probably call the military. The military would try to kill the dragon or capture it. Either way, it would end badly. "Sorry, Lisa, I am having some equipment problems. I need another 2 days to finish the salvage job." Lisa sighed. 2 days? "Jake, this is not a priority mission. Just grab what you can and move on to the next site. Trust me on this one. I am finding some really advanced technology here. Power systems that could change everything we know. I just need time to document it properly." It was not completely a lie. The stasis technology alone was worth more than anything the corporation had found in years. "Fine, you have 2 days, but I want reports every 6 hours, and they better be good reports, Jake." The screen went dark. Jake turned back toward the chamber, toward the dragon watching him from its prison. He had 2 days to figure out what to do. 2 days before the stasis field failed and the deadliest creature in the galaxy woke up. The question was simple but terrifying. Should he let it die in its cage, call for help, and probably start a war? Or do something incredibly stupid and try to free it himself? Jake looked into that ancient, intelligent eye and saw something he had not expected to see. He saw hope. The dragon somehow knew that he was there, that he had a choice to make, and it was hoping he would choose mercy over fear. He pulled up the station's power grid on his computer and started studying the stasis field controls. His hands were steady now, his decision made. If he was going to do this, he needed to do it right. He needed to control the release, to give himself a chance to communicate with the creature before anyone else arrived. Because Jake Morrison had learned one important lesson in his 15 years of salvage work. Sometimes the most valuable things you find are not the ones you were looking for, and sometimes the most dangerous choice is the only right one to make. The dragon watched him work, and if dragons could smile, Jake thought this one might be smiling. Jake spent the next 6 hours deep in the station's ancient computers. The code was so old that his translation software kept making mistakes, but slowly he began to understand how the system worked. The more he learned, the more horrified he became. The stasis field was not like a sleep or a freeze. The dragon had been conscious the entire time. For 3,000 years it had been awake inside that crystal prison, unable to move, unable to speak, just existing in a single frozen moment while the galaxy turned around it. Jake could not imagine that kind of torture. Even one day would drive most beings completely insane. Yet the dragon's eyes still showed intelligence. Whatever this creature was, its mind was strong enough to survive millennia of isolation without breaking. That fact alone told Jake this was not some mindless beast. This was a person, trapped and suffering for crimes that might not even be crimes at all. The files revealed more as Jake dug deeper. The architects had been powerful, more powerful than any civilization in the current galaxy. They had ships that could reshape planets, weapons that could ignite stars, and technology that seemed almost like magic. They had wanted to expand into a region they called the Dark Zone, a section of space that their sensors could barely penetrate. The dragon had come from that direction. It had appeared without warning and attacked their forward bases, not their civilian worlds, Jake noted, just their military installations and research facilities. The dragon had been surgical in its destruction, targeting only the things that would help the architects push deeper into the Dark Zone. The architects had tried to communicate. The files showed dozens of attempts to talk with the dragon, to negotiate, to understand what it wanted, but the dragon had only one message: repeated over and over in ways the architects could measure but not really comprehend. Stay away from the threshold. Do not cross the barrier. Turn back or be destroyed. The architects had not turned back. They had seen the dragon's power and wanted it for themselves. They had studied it, built weapons specifically designed to hurt it, and eventually managed to trap it. Jake found schematics for the battle, if you could call it that. 17 star systems destroyed. Billions dead. And in the end, the architects had won only because they were willing to sacrifice everything to build the perfect cage. But they had never crossed the threshold. Whatever lay in the dark zone, whatever the dragon had been protecting, the architects had never reached it. Their civilization had collapsed shortly after imprisoning the dragon. The files ended abruptly, with no explanation for what happened to them. Jake sat back and rubbed his eyes. His head hurt from staring at the screens for so long, and his body was stiff from sitting in the ancient chair. But now he understood. The dragon was not a destroyer. It was a guardian. It had been doing its job, protecting something important, and the architects had punished it for that. His scanner beeped urgently. The stasis field was degrading faster than his earlier calculations had predicted. He had maybe 40 hours now, not 2 days, and the field was not going to fail gradually. When it went, it would go all at once like a dam breaking. The dragon would go from complete paralysis to complete freedom in an instant. Jake stood and walked to the window overlooking the chamber. The dragon was still there, still watching. How did it know he was here? How could it track his movements through the station? The stasis field should have frozen all its senses along with its body, unless the field was not working as well as it used to. Maybe after 3,000 years, small cracks had formed. Maybe the dragon could see a little, hear a little, sense the world outside its prison in tiny fragments. That would be even worse, Jake thought. To know freedom was just beyond reach but still impossibly far away. He activated his suit's external speaker. He did not know if the dragon could hear him, but he had to try. I know you are in there. I know you are awake. My name is Jake Morrison. I am from Earth, from a species called humans. We are new to this galaxy. We did not know about you or the architects until today. The dragon's eye seemed to focus more intently on him. Maybe it was his imagination. I read the files. I know what happened, or at least part of it. You were protecting something. The architects would not listen. You did what you had to do. Jake took a breath. This was the hard part. The prison is failing. In less than 2 days, you will be free. I have 3 choices. I can leave and report this to my people. They will probably try to kill you when you wake up. Or I can stay quiet and leave, and you will wake up alone and probably very angry. Or I can help you wake up safely with someone here who wants to talk instead of fight. He paused, feeling foolish. He was talking to a creature that could not respond, making promises that might get him killed, based on nothing but a feeling that this was the right thing to do. I am going to help you. I am going to speed up the field collapse so I can control when and how you wake up. I am going to be here when you open your eyes, and I am going to try to explain that not everyone in this galaxy is like the architects. Some of us still believe in talking first and shooting later. Jake turned away from the window and headed back to the control room. His hands moved across the ancient controls, following the patterns he had learned from hours of study. The stasis field was a delicate balance of forces, each one perfectly calibrated to cancel out the dragon's natural energy. If he disrupted that balance in the right way, he could make the field fail sooner while keeping the collapse smooth. Alarms began to sound throughout the station. Warnings in the architect's language echoed through empty halls, telling nobody that the containment was failing. Jake ignored them and kept working. He routed power from secondary systems, overloaded the field generators in a specific sequence, and watched as the crystalline prison began to crack. It was beautiful in a terrifying way. Lines of light spread across the crystal surface like lightning frozen in glass. Each crack released a pulse of energy that made the station shake. Jake's suit alarms warned him about dangerous radiation levels, but he had expected that. The dragon's mere presence bent the laws of physics. Freeing it was going to make things messy. He activated his communicator and recorded a message. If this went wrong, if the dragon woke up and decided he was an enemy, at least someone would know what happened. This is Jake Morrison on Station Erebus 7. I have discovered an entity imprisoned here by the architects. Based on available evidence, I believe it was acting in defense of territory when it fought them. I am initiating controlled release of the stasis field. If you are hearing this message, it means I did not survive the process. Do not blame the creature. I made this choice freely. The galaxy needs to know that not every powerful being is an enemy. Sometimes they are just misunderstood. He sent the message with a 30-hour delay. If he survived, he would cancel it. If not, the truth would get out eventually. The cracks in the crystal were spreading faster now. Jake left the control room and made his way back to the observation deck. He wanted to be visible when the dragon woke up. He wanted it to see him standing there, unafraid and unarmed, choosing trust over fear. The first piece of crystal fell. Where it hit the chamber floor, it dissolved into pure light, beautiful and impossible. More pieces followed, falling like snow made of stars. The dragon's wing moved slightly, the first movement it had made in 3,000 years, and the shockwave knocked Jake off his feet. He pulled himself up, gripping the railing, and watched as the dragon emerged from its prison. It was even more massive than he had thought. The chamber was huge, but the dragon filled it, its body coiling through the space with a grace that should not be possible for something so large. The scales shifted and changed, colors that Jake's brain could not quite process. Where the dragon's claws touched the metal floor, the station's hull bent and twisted, not from weight or force, but from something deeper, like reality itself was bending around the creature. The dragon's head turned toward the observation window. Jake found himself looking directly into eyes that held galaxies. They were not human eyes, not even close, but Jake could read the intelligence there. This was a person. Strange and alien and powerful beyond measure, but still a person. For a long moment, neither of them moved. Jake could feel his heart pounding in his chest, could hear his own breathing loud in his helmet. The dragon could kill him with less effort than swatting a fly. One gesture, one moment of anger or fear, and Jake would cease to exist. But the dragon did not attack. Instead, something happened that Jake had not expected at all. Words appeared in his mind, not spoken but simply there, carrying meaning and emotion that no human language could fully express. "You are the one who broke the chains." Jake's voice was steady despite his fear. The chains were breaking anyway. "I just made sure you did not wake up to weapons fire. Your kind is young. Why do you understand what the architects could not? Maybe because we are young. We have not forgotten that prisons are cruel, even for those we fear." The dragon moved closer, energy crackling along its spine like lightning. Jake could see power barely contained in that living form, enough power to tear apart planets if it wanted to. "The architects called me Destroyer. Your kind will call me the same." Jake shook his head. "What do you call yourself?" There was a pause, as if the question surprised the dragon. Jake got the sense that nobody had asked. The dragon's eyes flashed with something that might have been amusement. "They cannot harm me, small one. But they can harm you. Why did you stay?" Jake considered the question. It was a good one. He could have run the moment the stasis field started collapsing. He could have jumped in his ship and been 3 star systems away by now. Instead, he was standing here talking to the most dangerous creature in the galaxy while warships closed in on his position. "Because I wanted to understand. Because you deserve to wake up to a choice, not a battle. Then I give you the same courtesy. Leave, Jake Morrison, before your kind arrives with fire." Jake shook his head. "If I leave, they will attack you the moment they arrive. If I stay, maybe I can convince them to stand down. Maybe I can make them listen. You would risk your life for a creature you have known for minutes. I have seen what happens when we shoot first and ask questions never. I have seen too many first contacts go wrong because fear won out over curiosity." Jake moved closer to the window, close enough that he could feel the energy radiating from the dragon, even through the station's hull. "Besides, you called yourself Keeper. What are you keeping? What is so important that you fought an entire civilization to protect it?" The dragon studied him for a long moment. Jake could feel that gaze weighing him, measuring him, deciding if he was worthy of the truth. "Very well, engineer. Let us see if your species has evolved enough to listen. But first, we must deal with your approaching warships." The dragon moved through the chamber toward the exterior of the station. Jake rushed to the nearest external viewport to watch. The creature passed through the station's airlock as if the solid metal was not even there, emerging into open space without any protection. It simply existed in the void, as comfortable there as a fish in water. In the distance, Jake could see the bright points of light that were ships dropping out of faster-than-light travel. Military vessels moving fast and already powering up weapons. His communicator crackled to life again. This is Captain Henry Blake of the warship Valiant. Station Erebus 7, respond immediately. We are detecting a Class Omega threat at your location. All personnel must evacuate now. Jake keyed his communicator. Captain Blake, this is Jake Morrison. I am the only person here and I am not leaving. Before you fire, you need to understand what you are dealing with. Mr. Morrison, evacuate immediately. That creature is designated a galaxy-level threat. Our orders are to neutralize it on site. Based on what information? Records from a dead civilization that was trying to invade its territory. Captain, this being is not a mindless destroyer. It is intelligent, it communicates, and it has been imprisoned for 3,000 years for doing exactly what we would do, protecting its home. There was a pause. Jake could imagine the captain conferring with his officers, trying to decide if the civilian engineer was crazy or if there was truth in his words. Mr. Morrison, the records we have show that entity destroyed 17 star systems while defending against an invasion. Captain, we have made mistakes too. Humanity has fought wars, done terrible things. Should every species in the galaxy shoot us on sight because of our history? Jake could see the Valiant now, a massive warship bristling with weapons. It was moving into attack position, and other ships were spreading out to flank the station. They were preparing for a battle. Lieutenant, get me a secure line to Fleet Command. I need clarification on these orders. Captain Blake's voice was tense. Jake felt a small spark of hope. The captain was at least thinking, not just shooting. Then everything changed. Another ship dropped out of faster-than-light travel, but this one was not human. Jake recognized the design from briefings. It was Krell, and the Krell were not known for their patience or diplomacy. They were a militant species that believed in shooting first and never bothering with questions. The Krell ship did not announce itself. It did not ask what was happening or try to communicate. It simply opened fire. Plasma torpedoes streaked through space toward the station, toward the Dragon, toward Jake. Jake watched the weapons coming and realized he had made his last stand. He had gambled that people would listen, that they would choose understanding over fear, and he had been wrong. The torpedoes would hit in seconds. The station would be destroyed. He would never know if his choice had been the right one. Then the Dragon moved. It was not a violent motion. The Dragon barely seemed to do anything at all. But space itself rippled like a stone dropped in a pond, and the torpedoes simply stopped existing. They did not explode. They did not deflect. They just ceased to be, as if they had never been fired at all. The Krell ship hung in space, probably as shocked as everyone else. Jake stared at the empty space where certain death had been a moment before. The Dragon had not even seemed to try. It had erased those weapons from reality with less effort than Jake would use to wave away smoke. Then the Dragon spoke, and its voice filled every communication channel in the sector. Every ship, human and Krell alike, heard the words directly in their minds. I am keeper of the threshold. I was imprisoned for defending what must be defended. This human saw past fear to understanding. Can the rest of you do the same? Or must this cycle of violence continue? The silence that followed was profound. Jake could imagine the chaos on the bridge of every ship in the area. Crews trying to understand what had just happened, captains trying to decide what to do next, weapons officers wondering if they should fire or stand down. Captain Blake's voice came through first. All ships, this is Captain Blake of the Valiant. Hold fire. Stand down all weapons. There was a pause, and Jake could hear the weight of the decision in the captain's voice. Mr. Morrison, it seems you were right. Let us talk. The next hours were tense. Jake stood in the observation deck while ships positioned themselves around the station. The Dragon floated in space nearby, visible to everyone, a constant reminder of the power that waited just beyond their weapons range. Not that weapons would help. Everyone had seen what happened to the Krell torpedoes. Captain Blake arrived on the station with a small security team. They were armed but not aggressive, and Jake appreciated that. The captain was a tall man with gray hair and tired eyes that had seen too much combat. He looked at Jake first, then at the Dragon visible through the viewport. Engineer Morrison. That was either the bravest or stupidest thing I've ever seen. Jake managed a weak smile. I am still not sure which one it was. You freed it. You knew what it could do, what it had done, and you freed it anyway. The stasis field was failing. It was going to wake up in less than 2 days, no matter what I did. I just made sure it woke up to a friendly face instead of an enemy. Jake looked at the Dragon. And I read the files, Captain. I know why it fought the architects. It was not aggression. It was defense, Blake nodded slowly. We received your delayed message. The one you recorded in case you did not survive. That took courage. Or stupidity. Like you said, I am still not sure. The captain walked to the viewport and stared at the dragon. It called itself Keeper. Keeper of what? That is what we need to find out. It was about to tell me when the ships arrived. Jake activated his external speaker again. Keeper, Captain Blake wants to talk. He is willing to listen. Will you tell us what you are protecting? The dragon's voice filled the room, bypassing their communicators entirely. You wish to know about the threshold, very well. I will show you. What happened next was difficult to describe. The dragon did something and suddenly Jake's mind was somewhere else. He could still feel his body standing on the station, but his consciousness was floating in a different space, a different reality. He saw a tear in the fabric of existence, a wound in space that bled colors and energies that should not exist. Through the tear, he could sense something vast and hungry, something that existed in dimensions his human brain could not properly understand. It was aware. It was watching, and it wanted to come through. This is the threshold, the dragon's voice explained. A doorway between realities, between dimensions. It was created by accident in a war older than your species can imagine. The civilization before the architects tried to close it and failed. They created me and others like me to guard it, to prevent anyone from opening it wider. Jake saw what would happen if the threshold opened completely. He saw galaxies consumed, reality itself unraveling, existence ending not with a bang but with a terrible transformation into something alien and wrong. The architects found hints of the threshold. They thought it was a source of unlimited power. They planned to harness it, to drain energy from the other side. They did not understand that opening the door would destroy everything. The vision ended. Jake found himself back in his body, gasping for air. Captain Blake was on his knees, his face pale. The security team looked shaken but alert. That thing, Blake whispered. That was real? It exists. It exists, the dragon confirmed. And there are those who even now seek it. The Krell excavation in the Outer Rim. They are 3 years from finding enough information to locate the threshold. When they do, you have perhaps a month before everything ends. Jake forced his breathing to steady. Why are you telling us this? You could handle the Krell yourself. I could destroy the Krell fleets, yes, but more would come and more after that. The threshold can... Captain Blake stood slowly, using the viewport frame to steady himself. Jake could see the man's hands shaking slightly. Seeing the threshold, even in a vision, was not something the human mind was built to process easily. You want an alliance? Blake said, his voice rough. You want us to help you guard this threshold. I want you to help me prevent others from making the architect's mistake. Not through conquest, but through knowledge. Show them what I showed you. Help them understand that some boundaries exist for the protection of all. Blake looked at Jake. This is way above my authority level. I need to contact Fleet Command, the civilian government, probably every major power in this sector of the galaxy. Then do so. The dragon replied. I have waited 3,000 years. I can wait a few more days, but do not wait too long. The Krell are not the only ones searching for ancient secrets. The captain activated his communicator and started barking orders. Within minutes, the area around Station Erebus 7 was a hub of activity. More ships arrived, including diplomatic vessels and science ships. The station that had been abandoned and forgotten was suddenly the center of galactic attention. Jake found himself in the middle of it all. Officials wanted to talk to him, ask him questions, understand how he had made first contact with the Keeper. Scientists wanted access to the station's computers to study the architect's records. Military officers wanted threat assessments and tactical information. Through it all, the dragon waited patiently in space, a massive presence that everyone was very carefully polite to. The Krell ship had left after a tense standoff, but Jake knew they would be back. The Krell did not forgive being made to look foolish. Admiral Kate Sullivan arrived 2 days later on a fleet command ship. She was a small woman with sharp eyes and a reputation for making hard decisions. Jake had heard of her. Everyone in the salvage business had. She was the one who had negotiated the peace treaty with the Vex Collective after the border wars. If anyone could handle this situation, it was probably her. She met with Jake first in a conference room aboard her ship. Just the two of them, no guards or advisors. Engineer Morrison, you have caused quite a situation. I know. I am sorry for the chaos, but I am not sorry for the choice I made. Sullivan smiled slightly. That is good. Because if you were sorry, it would mean you did not understand what you accomplished. You made peaceful first contact with a being powerful enough to destroy fleets. That is something to be proud of, not apologize for. Jake felt some of the tension leave his shoulders. Thank you, Admiral. I was worried I would be arrested or worse. Oh, there are plenty of people who want to arrest you. Maybe execute you. There are admirals who think you unleashed a threat that should have stayed locked up forever, but they are idiots. Sullivan leaned forward. I read the files you sent from the station. I saw what the architects did, how they imprisoned a sentient being for doing its job. I saw how you chose to trust instead of fear. The galaxy needs more people like you, Morrison, not fewer. What happens now? Now we try to build something unprecedented, an alliance with a being we barely understand. To guard against a threat most people do not even believe exists. It is going to be difficult. Many species will resist. Some will say we are being manipulated. Others will want to study the threshold themselves, thinking they can control it where the architects failed. Jake nodded. The dragon, the keeper, it said the Krell are close to finding the threshold. 3 years close. Which is why we need to move quickly. I am proposing a joint task force. Multiple species working together to monitor the threshold and prevent anyone from trying to open it. But I need the keeper to teach us. We need to understand what we are protecting and how to protect it. Will it agree? It has been guarding alone for so long. Trusting others might be difficult. Sullivan stood and walked to the viewport. Outside, the dragon floated in space, surrounded by warships that it could destroy without effort, but chose not to. It trusted you. That is a start. Now we need to prove that trust was not misplaced. The meeting that followed was historic. Admiral Sullivan gathered representatives from every major power in the sector. Humans, Vex, Centauri, even a reluctant Krell observer. They met aboard the largest diplomatic vessel available, in a conference room hastily modified to allow the dragon to participate via holographic link. Jake was there too, though he tried to stay in the background. He was just an engineer. He did not belong in a room full of ambassadors and admirals. But Sullivan had insisted he attend. The keeper appeared as a holographic projection that filled one end of the room. Even as an image, its presence was overwhelming. Several of the ambassadors looked uncomfortable just being in the same virtual space as the creature. Admiral Sullivan spoke first. Keeper, we have gathered the major powers of this region to discuss your proposal. Before we proceed, I must ask a question that many here are thinking. Why should we trust you? Your power is undeniable. What stops you from using us and then turning on us? The dragon's eyes seemed to look at each person in the room individually. Nothing stops me. If I wished to conquer this region of space, I could do so easily. If I wished to destroy you all, you would already be dead. I do not do these things because conquest is not my purpose. I am a guardian, not a conqueror. I protect because that is what I was made to do. Ambassador Chen from the Centauri Alliance spoke up. She was an elderly woman with a reputation for skepticism. You say you were made by whom? For what purpose beyond guarding this threshold? I was created by the Makers, a civilization that existed before the architects. They saw the threshold form and understood the danger it represented. They made me and others like me to stand watch, to prevent anyone from making the mistake of opening it wider. Where are these Makers now? Chen asked. Gone. Dead. Ascended to another form of existence. I do not know. I know only that I remain and I have my duty. A Krell officer, Commander Vex, growled a question. The Krell were large reptilian beings with a warrior culture. You destroyed Krell vessels without provocation. How do you justify this act of war? Your vessels fired first. I erased the weapons to protect those on the station, and to demonstrate that attacking me is pointless. No ship was harmed. No crew was killed. I could have destroyed your entire fleet. Instead, I showed restraint. Is this not what you value in warriors? The strength to kill combined with the wisdom to choose not to? Vex sat back, seemingly satisfied with the answer. Among the Krell, showing strength while sparing an enemy was indeed valued. For 3 hours, they questioned the keeper. They asked about the threshold, about the architects, about the dragon's capabilities and intentions. Jake watched as the dragon answered each question patiently, never showing anger or frustration despite the obvious hostility from some of the representatives. Finally, Admiral Sullivan called for a recess. The ambassadors left to consult with their governments. The keeper's hologram vanished. Jake remained in the conference room, suddenly exhausted. Sullivan sat down beside him. You started something big, Engineer Morrison. I know. I keep thinking about that. One decision and now the whole galaxy is involved. That is how change happens. One person makes a choice and ripples spread outward. The question is whether those ripples will build into something good or something terrible. Jake looked at the empty space where the dragon's image had been. Do you think they will agree? Will they help guard the threshold? Some will. Others will need more convincing. And some will never agree, will actively work against us because they fear what they do not understand. But that is politics. We work with what we have. The conference resumed the next day. Ambassador Chen spoke for many when she outlined the concerns. The Keeper asks us to guard a threat we cannot see, based on information we cannot verify, against enemies we do not yet have. This is a difficult sell to our governments. Then let me show you, the Keeper replied. Not a vision this time. Physical evidence. There are monitoring stations near the threshold built by the makers. They are old and failing, but they still function. Send a science team. Let them see the readings, measure the energy, confirm that what I say is true. That changed the tone of the discussion. Hard evidence was something governments could understand. Within hours, a joint science team was being assembled. Jake volunteered immediately, and Admiral Sullivan approved. You started this, Morrison. You should see it through. The science vessel departed 3 days later. Jake stood on the bridge as they jumped to faster-than-light speed, heading toward coordinates the Keeper had provided. He was going to see the threshold. Not in a vision, but in reality. He was going to stand on the edge of a tier between dimensions and look into the void beyond. The thought should have terrified him. Instead, he felt only curiosity. What lay beyond the threshold? What had the makers been so afraid of? And most importantly, could the Keeper's faith in humanity and its allies be justified? Jake looked out at the stars streaming past as the ship jumped through space. Somewhere out there, the Krell were digging through ancient ruins, getting closer to knowledge that could doom them all. Somewhere out there, other threats waited, drawn by rumors of ancient power and forbidden secrets. But also out there, moving to intercept and protect, was the Keeper. No longer alone. No longer imprisoned. Free to do what it was made to do. And now with allies to H, the science vessel dropped out of faster-than-light travel at the edge of a region of space that made every sensor go haywire. Jake stood on the bridge, staring at the readings that made no sense at all. Space itself was twisted here, bent in ways that violated the known laws of physics. This is impossible, Dr. Ellen Price muttered, studying her instruments. She was the lead scientist on the mission, a physicist who specialized in exotic matter. These readings suggest space-time is fractured. Not bent or warped, actually broken. That is the threshold, the Keeper's voice said in their minds. The dragon had accompanied them, flying alongside the ship through the vast emptiness. You are seeing reality torn open. What you measure is the wound, not what lies beyond. Jake moved to the viewport. At first he saw nothing unusual, just empty space and distant stars. Then his eyes adjusted and he saw it. A shimmer in space like heat waves on a summer day, but vast beyond comprehension. It was at least a light year across, a tear in existence that pulsed with energies that hurt to look at. The monitoring stations are ahead, the Keeper said. 3 remain functional. I will guide you. The ship moved slowly toward the nearest station. It was small, barely larger than a house, and it looked ancient. The hull was pitted from millions of years of cosmic radiation, but light still blinked on its surface, showing that something inside still worked. Dr. Price led a team aboard, Jake among them. The interior was cramped and filled with technology that made their most advanced computers look like toys. Everything was still running, powered by some source that had not failed in the 5 million years since the station was built. 5 million years, Price whispered, running her scanner over a power core. This thing has been operating continuously for 5 million years. Do you understand how impossible that is? Jake understood. Humanity's oldest functional technology was measured in centuries at most, not millennia and definitely not millions of years. Whoever the makers were, they had possessed knowledge so far beyond the current galactic civilization that comparison was meaningless. The station's computers were accessible, though the interface was strange. Price worked on translation while Jake explored. He found logs, endless logs measuring the threshold stability over millions of years. The reading showed something terrifying. The threshold was growing, slowly, almost imperceptibly, but definitely growing. It was a fraction of a percent larger than it had been when the makers built these stations. At current rates, it would take another 1,000,000 years to grow significantly. But the growth was accelerating. "Dr. Price, you need to see this." She came over and studied the data Jake had found. Her face went pale. "If this acceleration continues, the threshold will reach critical instability in 10,000 years. Maybe less." "What happens at critical instability?" Jake asked, though he suspected he knew the answer. "It tears itself open completely. Whatever is on the other side comes through." Price sat down heavily. 10,000 years sounds like a long time, but in cosmic terms it is nothing. We're looking at a clock counting down to the end of everything, and we just now noticed it was running. They gathered more data over the next week. They visited all 3 functioning monitoring stations, compiled readings, and confirmed what the Keeper had told them. The threshold was real, it was dangerous, and it needed to be watched. More than that, it needed to be understood, maybe even repaired, though nobody had any idea how to do that. When they returned to civilized space, their report created chaos. Governments that had been skeptical now had undeniable evidence. The threshold existed. The danger was real. Something had to be done. The alliance formed quickly after that. Humans, Vex, Centauri, and even some Krell factions agreed to work together. They called it the Threshold Watch, and they gave it a simple mission: monitor the tear in space, prevent anyone from trying to exploit it, and search for a way to close it permanently. Jake found himself assigned to the watch as a liaison with the Keeper. It was not a job he had ever imagined having. He was an engineer, not a diplomat. But Admiral Sullivan insisted, "The Keeper trusts you, Morrison." "That matters. We need someone who can communicate with it, understand what it needs, coordinate our efforts. You are that someone." So Jake became the bridge between humanity and the Dragon. He spent his days translating the Keeper's ancient knowledge into terms modern scientists could understand. He coordinated patrol schedules, managed research teams, and occasionally had to explain to very important people why they could not do dangerous experiments near the threshold. The Krell were the biggest problem. Commander Vex's faction had joined the Watch, but other Krell groups continued their excavations in the Outer Rim. They were convinced that the threshold was a source of power they could harness, that the Keeper and the Watch were keeping secrets that rightfully belonged to all species. 6 months after the alliance formed, a Krell excavation team found something. It was a data cache left by the architects containing incomplete instructions for building a device that could interact with the threshold. The Krell leadership declared it their property and refused to share the information. Jake was in a meeting with Admiral Sullivan when the news came through. The Admiral's face went hard. "They are going to try it. They are going to build that device and use it. Can we stop them?" Jake asked. "Not without starting a war. The Krell are technically within their rights. That dig site is in their territory." Jake thought fast. What if the Keeper asked them to stop? It has authority here more than any of our governments. Sullivan nodded slowly. "That might work. Can you arrange it?" Jake contacted the Keeper, explained the situation, and waited. The Dragon's response was immediate. "I will speak with the Krell, but Jake Morrison, you should come with me. They need to see that we stand together, that this is not me commanding, but us asking." 3 hours later, Jake found himself aboard a small shuttle heading toward the Krell home world. The Keeper flew alongside, massive and impossible in the void. Jake had been in dangerous situations before, but flying into Krell territory to tell them they could not use their own discovery felt particularly risky. The Krell leadership met them in a war chamber, a huge room designed to intimidate. Dozens of Krell warriors stood around the walls, and the High Commander sat on a throne made from the hull of an enemy warship. The Keeper's presence filled the room, even though it was only there as a hologram. The High Commander, a scarred veteran named Cran, glared at the image. "You come to my world to tell me what I can and cannot do with my discoveries. This is not welcome, Keeper. I come to warn you, High Commander. The device you found is incomplete. The architects never finished it because they realized it would destabilize the threshold. Using it would tear open the barrier and doom your species along with all others. That is your claim. Perhaps you simply wish to keep the power for yourself." Jake stepped forward. He knew this was risky, but he had to try. "High Commander Cran, I am the human who freed the Keeper. I read the architect's files. I saw what they tried to do and what it cost them. The Keeper is not trying to hoard power. It is trying to prevent a catastrophe that would kill us all. Krell included. Cran's eyes focused on Jake. Krell's eyes were cold and calculating, but Jake thought he saw intelligence there and perhaps even doubt. You freed it. Why? Because it was the right thing to do. Because I believed it deserved a chance to explain itself before being judged. Because I chose to trust. Jake took a breath. I am asking you to make the same choice now. Trust that we are telling you the truth. Trust that this is not about power or control but about survival. And if I choose not to trust? The Keeper answered. Then I will be forced to destroy your excavation site. I do not wish to do this. I do not wish to be your enemy. But I cannot allow that device to be completed. The stakes are too high. Cran stood from his throne. He was massive, easily 2 meters tall and heavily muscled. He walked down to stand before Jake, looking down at the small human who had dared to speak in his war chamber. You have courage, human. Foolish courage, but courage nonetheless. He turned to the Keeper's hologram. I will agree to a compromise. Bring your scientists. Examine the device with my scientists. If they confirm your claims, I will halt the project. But if you are lying, if this is a trick, I will consider it an act of war. Jake and the Keeper exchanged a glance. It was not perfect, but it was a chance. Agreed, the Keeper said. The joint examination took 2 weeks. Scientists from the Watch worked alongside Krell researchers, studying the incomplete device and running simulations. The conclusion was unanimous. The device would work exactly as the Keeper predicted. It would interact with the threshold, and that interaction would cause a cascading failure that would tear the barrier open. High Commander Cran kept his word. He halted the excavation and shared the data with the Watch. More than that, he committed additional Krell resources to the Alliance. He announced to his people that the threshold was not a source of power to be exploited, but a danger to be guarded against. It was a turning point. With Krell's support, the Watch had resources and military strength to patrol the regions near the threshold. They established permanent monitoring stations, trained CE,